Yes, dear.
Welcome, everyone. Well, no doubt you've passed the building many times. You've seen the name in capital letters on the pediment, Colvin, the same name etched here in granite. To many of you, a younger generation, it may be my most readily recognized legacy. In my day, the Colvin building was our first skyscraper, with its 5 full floors, and within those very walls, the city's first elevator. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Addison Beecher Colvin.
The Honorable Addison Beecher Colvin, born 1858, right here in Glens Falls, New York.
Thank you, dear. And may I present my wife, Marie Louise.
Thank you, dear, and a good day to all of you. The Colvin building my husband speaks of is but one of his many accomplishments, but I fear my husband may be too reticent to tell you the others. He was born of humble beginnings. He was orphaned at age 5.
My mother died when I was but an infant.
And his father died in the line of duty as a volunteer fireman. Addison comes from courageous stock, does he not?
Hardship and adversity can serve to give purpose to a man's life.
Or a woman's life. We're talking to 2015, dear, a very different era.
Oh, yes. Adversity can serve to give purpose to a man or a woman's life. I learned quite young that life isn't always fair. If there are obstacles in your way, you must overcome them yourself.
And overcome them he did. Addison began working at age 14 at a local store. Eventually, he had saved enough to invest in a small printing operation.
In 1879, I began the Glens Falls Times, the area's first newspaper.
At 21, he was the youngest newspaper editor in the United States.
And 4 years later, I had the great fortune of marrying Miss Louise Hees of the Fonda Hees.
Thank you, dear. We were married for over 50 years. We had 3 children, Francis, Adela, and Harriet. Sadly, our Harriet passed at age 28. She's buried here as well.
Some hardships are more difficult to overcome than others.
But enough of these sad tidings. We're here to celebrate the life of Addison B. Colvin. Tell the good folks about your accomplishments, dear.
If you insist. In 1883, I brought telephone service to the Glens Falls area. And I'm not speaking of those unsightly cell phone towers dotting the beautiful foothills of our mountains. Those of you carrying those small wireless gadgets may not realize this or appreciate, but there was a time when our area was, how do you say, off the grid. We needed physical cables to connect us to the world at large.
The man was a visionary. The following year, he started the area's first electric company, and there was light.
Some of our investments weren't as successful as others, but I did help to bring public transportation to the area.
Ah, yes, and that eventually became the Hudson Valley Railway. My brother Ledley was a partner in that venture.
Yes, he was. I was also founder and president of the Glens Falls National Trust.
Addison's entrepreneurial skills helped to turn a small upstate town into a thriving modern city.
It's true. I've had the opportunity to pursue and achieve great dreams. The grandest of these materialized in 1894 when I began my 4-year service as treasurer of New York State.
The youngest treasurer in the state's history, I might add.
Of all the positions I've held, my service as treasurer is the one that I value the most.
As for me, it does my heart good to know that the Colvin family was instrumental in bringing theater to Glens Falls, New York.
Quite right. The Empire Theater on South Street. Many of our guests are too young to remember the Empire as a grand theater, or if they do, it was only as a place to see moving pictures. Well, we watched George M. Cohan perform his original plays there. Al Jolson, Billy Burke performed at the Empire as well. And how honored we were to have the first family of theater, John, Ethel, and Lionel Barrymore.
And to think, as the curtains rose on the Empire for the very first time, there we were, dressed in our finery, in our own box seats.
What was the play, Marie? Do you recall?
Way down east, dear.
Oh, yes. What glorious days. But fortune can be fickle, and the winds of change can turn from one day to the next.
Not all of our investments were wise ones. Unfortunately, over the years, we were forced to sell many of our acquisitions. The Glens Falls Times became the Glens Falls Post-Star.
And the Glens Falls Trust was sold to the Glens Falls National Bank. And in 1929, the stock market crashed, followed by the Great Depression, and we lost nearly everything else, including our lovely home. But, as all men know,
And women.
as all men and women know, with nothing we arrive, and with nothing we depart. But we do leave one thing behind: our legacy. In my 80 years on this earth, I would like to think that I left the world something more than a name on a building. I'd like to think that I helped to usher this city into the 20th century. And while the New York Times may have referred to me as a pompous
Addison.
I can proudly say that I helped to change my neighborhood for the better. I died in 1939, but the world is a better place because I lived. Not every man can say that at the end of his life, but it should be said by every man
And woman.
and woman.
The changes in our town and our time may seem small and insignificant to some. A city's first newspaper, its first telephones, its first elevators. But you must remember, this was a time when electric illumination and public transportation were new and exciting ideas that only a visionary could grasp. And it's visionaries like my husband, Addison Beecher Colvin, who lead us into the future.
I'd like to think that I had a gift for anticipating the needs of a growing city at the turn of the 20th century. But your world is changing much faster than ours. What can you envision for this new century? How can you make that happen? Perhaps you'll think upon this when next you pass Glens Falls' first skyscraper and see the name Colvin. Thank you and good day, folks.